looking at me like that?
Sorry. It's just that my mom has your picture in her wallet.
Your mom has my picture? I don't know your mom.
Every time I ask, she just goes quiet and changes the topic. One time she cried a little, but then she said she had something in her eye.
Daniel stared. He didn't mean to be rude about it. He was 6, not a baby. He knew staring was bad manners because his mom had told him at least 400 times. But the new girl had just sat down beside him, and something about her face made his brain go completely blank. She turned and caught him. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Daniel blinked. "Sorry. It's just..." He tilted his head. "My mom has your picture. In her wallet." The girl stared at him. "Your mom has my picture?" "Yes." "Why?" "I don't know." She narrowed her eyes. "How does she even know me?" "I don't know your mom." Daniel shrugged. But it wasn't a careless shrug. It was the shrug of someone who had been wondering the same thing for a very long time. "Every time I ask, she just goes quiet and changes the topic. One time she cried a little, but then she said she had something in her eye." The new girl looked at him for a long moment. "That's really strange." "I know." She seemed to think about it. Then she put her hand out the way she'd seen grown-ups do when they were being serious. "I'm Ella." He shook it. "Daniel." "Daniel," she repeated, like she was filing it somewhere important. "Is your mom coming to pick you after school?" "She always does." Ella nodded slowly. "Decision made. I want to meet her." Daniel leaned in and whispered, even though their teacher hadn't even started class yet. "I think she knows you. Like, really knows you. The picture isn't a small one, it's like a proper photo. She looks at it sometimes when she thinks I'm not watching." Ella felt something shift in her chest. Something she was too young to name but old enough to feel. "Okay," she whispered back. "I'll wait with you after school. If you're already curious, good, because this story is about to get wild. Subscribe if you haven't, like this video, and drop a comment below. Do you believe in coincidences? Because by the end of this, you might not." The school day passed the way school days do when you're waiting for something, slowly, dramatically, and with too much maths in the middle. By the time the final bell rang, Ella had already packed her bag twice. She and Daniel walked to the gate together with the easy confidence of children who had decided they were friends and didn't need any more time to confirm it. They stood by the low wall near the entrance, bags on their backs, watching cars pull in and parents step out. "Tell me more about the picture," Ella said. Daniel thought about it carefully, the way he always did when something felt important. "She's smaller in it. Like, younger. And she's laughing. A really big laugh, not a polite one. And the background looks like somewhere nice, like a garden or something. I don't know." "Does she look happy?" "Very happy." He paused. "She doesn't always look like that now." Ella was quiet for a moment. "My mom has pictures like that too. Old ones from before. But she's not my real mom." Daniel turned to look at her. "What? The mom I have now? She's not the one who had me. My dad told me when I was 5 because I kept asking why I didn't look like her." She said it plainly, the way children say hard things before they've learned to dress them up. "He said my real mom had to go away." Daniel's eyes went wide. "That's scary." "A little bit," Ella agreed. "I'm going to find her when I'm older though. I've already decided." Daniel nodded firmly, because this seemed like exactly the kind of thing that required a firm nod. "I'll help you. I'm very good at finding things. Last week I found my mom's keys, and they were inside a shoe." Ella almost smiled. "That's not the same thing. The skill transfers." She did smile then, and they stood there in comfortable silence while more parents arrived, until Daniel's eyes swept the gate and he frowned. That wasn't his mum. A woman he recognized as Lola, his mum's friend who smelled like coconut and always brought chin-chin, was walking toward them, waving. She came and greeted Daniel warmly, ruffling his hair in a way he tolerated because she always had snacks. She barely glanced at Ella. Just a quick smile, polite, nothing more. Daniel's heart sank a little. Before he climbed into Lola's car, he turned to Ella with the gravity of someone making a very important promise. "She couldn't come today, but I'll bring her picture tomorrow. The one she carries. You can look at it yourself." Ella nodded. She watched the car pull away, then stood at the gate a little longer than she needed to, thinking thoughts too big for a 6-year-old, but thinking them anyway. The next morning, Daniel came to school with the picture folded carefully in the front pocket of his backpack, wrapped in a piece of tissue like it was something precious, which, to him, it was. He had taken it from his mom's wallet very carefully while she was in the shower, with the full intention of putting it back before she noticed. He had left a note in the wallet that said, "Borrowed, back soon. Daniel." He felt this was both honest and professional. He found Ella the moment he walked into class. "I have it," he said. They went to the corner of the classroom before the teacher arrived, crouching near the bookshelf with the seriousness of two scientists about to make a discovery. Daniel unfolded the picture. Ella stared at it. It was a woman. A beautiful woman with a black bob and a laugh so wide it took up half her face. She was standing in front of what looked like a garden wall covered in white flowers, her hand raised like she was mid-sentence, clearly unaware the photo was being taken. "She's pretty," Ella said. "I know. She's my mum." Daniel said it with uncomplicated pride. But Ella wasn't looking at the woman anymore. She was looking at the background, the white flowers, the stone wall, the particular curve of it, the way the garden light fell across the corner. Her breath caught. "Daniel." "What?" "This background." She pointed. "I've seen this before." Daniel squinted. "You have?" "My dad has a picture too. From a long time ago. It's on the shelf in his study, and I'm not supposed to touch it, but I've looked at it up close like 50 times. She looked at him with wide, serious eyes. "I think it's the same place." For 3 full seconds, neither of them moved. Then Daniel said, very slowly, "You should bring your picture. I'm bringing it tomorrow." "This," Daniel said, with the air of someone narrating a documentary, "is getting very interesting." The next day, Ella arrived with her father's picture tucked in her own bag. She had borrowed it with 0 notes left behind, which she acknowledged internally was less professional than Daniel's method but faster. They met at the bookshelf again. 2 pictures, side by side. The white flowers, the stone wall, the curve of the corner, the light. It was identical. Not similar. Not kind of like. The same wall, the same flowers, the same garden. One picture cut from the left, one from the right, like 2 halves of the same moment. Ella and Daniel looked at each other. "They were there together," Daniel said. "At the same time," Ella added, "which means they know each other. Or knew each other." A pause. "Do you think they were friends?" Ella asked. "Maybe." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Or maybe more than friends." Ella's eyebrows shot up. "Daniel." "What?" "I'm just saying. They could be cousins." Daniel looked at her. She looked at him. Then they both looked at the pictures. One woman with a black bob and a brown face. One man with straight black hair and a Korean face. And arrived at the same conclusion at the exact same time. "Probably not cousins," they said together. "Unless," Daniel said slowly, "the world is a lot more surprising than we think." "My teacher says the world is very surprising," Ella offered. "Okay, but this might be too surprising even for the world." Ella pressed her lips together. "We need to ask our parents." Daniel agreed. This required adult information, and they had exhausted all the child-level investigation available to them. It was time to escalate. He picked up his picture. She picked up hers. "Tonight," Daniel said. "Tonight," Ella confirmed. They shook hands again. That evening, Daniel waited until his mom had finished cooking and was sitting on the couch with her cup of tea. The specific combination of events he had identified, over time, as the moment she was most likely to answer questions properly. He climbed up beside her. "Mum. I made a friend today." "That's lovely, baby." "Her name is Ella. She's Korean." Rita smiled at her tea. "That's nice." "And she has a picture on her dad's shelf." Daniel turned to look at her very directly. Of a garden with white flowers and a stone wall. Rita's cup stopped halfway to her mouth. "And you have a picture of the same garden in your wallet." Silence. "Mum." Rita set her cup down with hands that were very carefully steady. She turned to look at her son. This boy who had her eyes and his father's stubborn habit of looking at things straight on until they made sense. And she felt something rise in her throat that she had been swallowing for 5 years. "What's her full name?" she asked. Her voice came out softer than she meant it to. She said Ella. "I don't know her last name." He watched his mother's face. He was 6, not a baby. He could see something happening behind her eyes, something big and careful. "Mom, are you okay?" "I'm fine." She smiled, and it was a real smile, but it had cracks in it. "Tell her I'll come to school tomorrow. I'll drop you and come in to meet her." Daniel looked at her for a long moment. "You know her," he said. It wasn't a question. Rita reached over and pulled him into a hug that lasted a second too long for someone who was just fine. "Go and wash your hands for dinner," she said into his hair. Ella had less success. Her father, Min Jae, was a man of very precise emotional walls. Ella had been studying these walls her whole life, and she knew exactly where each one was, but she had not yet figured out how to get through them. She found him at his desk, working late as usual. "Appa. I made a friend today. His name is Daniel. He's black, like half black. His mum is black and," she paused, because she had learned that pacing was important when asking Min Jae things. "His mum has a picture in her wallet, of a garden with white flowers. And it's the same picture as the one on your shelf." Min Jae's hand went still on his keyboard. "Which picture?" he said. "The one you said I shouldn't touch." "I haven't touched it," she added, very quickly. "I've just looked at it, very carefully, with my eyes." Min Jae turned in his chair to look at her. He had the same straight, serious gaze that she'd inherited, and she met it with her own. "Who is Daniel's mother?" he asked. "I don't know her name, but she's coming to school tomorrow to meet me." Something moved across his face. There and gone, like a light turned off. "Okay," he said. And then, "Go to bed, Ella. Do you know her, Appa?" "Bed. That means yes," Ella said, not accusingly, just observationally, and she padded out of the study while Min Jae sat very still and stared at the shelf where the picture stood. The garden. The white flowers. Rita's laugh, caught in a photograph. Standing in his mother's garden on the afternoon everything had still been whole. He sat there for a long time. The next morning, Rita parked her car outside the school and sat for a moment before getting out. She had looked at Ella's picture. The one Daniel had shown her the night before when she'd quietly asked to see it, and she had recognized it immediately. Not just the background. The child. She'd seen pictures of Ella before, on Min Jae's company website where someone had posted a family day event 3 years ago, and she had stared at them for so long, so many times, that she had them memorized. Her daughter had grown. She was beautiful and she was 6 and she was right inside the school. Rita pressed her hand flat against her sternum, breathed, and got out of the car. Daniel spotted his mum first and grabbed Ella's arm. "That's her." Ella turned. Rita was walking toward them across the schoolyard, and she moved like someone trying very hard to look calm, which Ella, even at 6, could tell was not the same thing as being calm. She was a beautiful woman with a black bob that swung as she walked, and her eyes. Her eyes found Ella before she was even close, and they went soft in a way that made something in Ella's chest feel strange and pulled. Rita crouched down when she reached them, right to their level. She looked at Daniel first. "Hey, baby." Quick hug, kiss to his forehead. Then she looked at Ella. Ella looked back. For a moment neither of them spoke. Then Rita opened her arms, and Ella, who was a practical child who did not usually hug strangers, walked straight into them. She didn't know why. She just did. Rita held her, and her eyes closed, and she pressed her face briefly against the top of Ella's head and breathed in. "Hi," she said, when she pulled back. Her voice was steady by force. "I'm Rita, and I think I'm your auntie." Ella tilted her head. "My auntie. My dad never told me I had an auntie." Rita smiled, and it was warm and sad at the same time in a way that Ella stored away to think about later. Some adults are very bad at sharing information. Ella nodded seriously. "My dad is very bad at sharing information." "I know," Rita said quietly. Daniel was watching all of this with great scientific interest. "So that's how you know each other?" he asked his mum. "She's family?" "Something like that," Rita said. Ella tugged gently at Rita's sleeve. "My mum isn't my real mum, you know. My dad got another lady to take care of me. Jade. She's nice, but she doesn't feel like a mum." Rita went completely still. Not outwardly. Outwardly she smiled and smoothed Ella's collar and said, "I see," in a normal voice. But something inside her had gone very, very cold. Min Jae had given her daughter a replacement. She stood up slowly. Daniel looked up at his mother's face and recognized the expression, because he'd seen it once when someone had been very rude to her at the grocery store. Except this was about 10 times more intense. I have to go now, babies, Rita said. Her voice was calm. Perfectly, terrifyingly calm. Daniel, go to class. Ella, it was lovely to meet you. Properly meet you. Ella watched her go. Your mom looks like she's going somewhere important, she told Daniel. She looks like that when she's going to fix something. Daniel agreed. Rita drove in the direction of Kim Corp without making a single wrong turn, because when she was this focused she didn't make wrong turns. She'd spent 5 years being heartbroken. She was done. She had been 24 when Min Jae's mother arrived from Korea without warning and dismantled her entire life in the span of 3 days. Yoona Kim had walked into the house she shared with her husband and made it clear, in very measured and very cold tones, that she did not consider Rita a real wife, did not consider Daniel a real child of the family, and would be making the appropriate arrangements. Rita had fought. She had fought every day, showing up at that house, knocking on that door, asking for her phone back because they'd taken it, asking to see Ella, asking for any thread she could pull. And every time, the door had been shut in her face. Then the divorce papers came. She had stared at Min Jae's signature for a long time. Something about it looked slightly wrong, but she'd been too wrecked to dig into it, and what did it matter? He'd signed it. He'd chosen his mother over her and Daniel and apparently hadn't fought for anything. Or so she had believed. She pulled into the underground car park of Kim Corp and took the elevator up. When she walked toward Min Jae's floor, 2 security men stepped forward. Ma'am. I need to see Min Jae Kim. Do you have an appointment? I don't need an appointment. I was his wife. She said it cleanly, without drama, and the certainty in her voice made them hesitate just long enough for Min Jae to open the door. He had heard the voices. He'd heard one of them, and something in him had known immediately, the way you know certain things in your bones. He stood in the doorway. Rita stood in the corridor. 5 years and 2 feet of distance, and the silence was so loud it had weight. Let her through, Min Jae said. They sat on opposite sides of his office, and the quiet stretched between them until Rita decided she had spent enough time in silences that didn't serve her. I'll skip the pleasantries, she said. I want Ella. I am not going to sit back while you give my daughter a replacement mother when I am very much alive. Min Jae's jaw tightened. You left, Rita. You left Ella here. I was thrown out. My mother said. Your mother threw me and my son out of our home, she said, her voice rising just slightly before she caught it. Took my phone so I couldn't reach you, and refused to let me see my daughter. And when you came back from your trip you sent me divorce papers. You didn't come looking. You didn't come at all. Min Jae opened his mouth. Then he closed it. Something was shifting in his expression. The anger draining out of it, replaced by something slower and heavier. Rita, he said carefully, I didn't send you divorce papers. She stared at him. There was your signature. I came back sick. High fever for 2 weeks. When I couldn't find you and my mother kept saying you'd left voluntarily, I was devastated, but I was barely functioning. He exhaled. The papers that came to me had your signature on them. I thought you'd moved on. I thought you'd decided. His voice dropped. I was heartbroken. The room was very quiet. Those papers came to me with your name on them too, Rita said slowly. I thought the signature looked a little off, but I was in so much pain I didn't. She stopped. Your mother. Min Jae said nothing, which was its own kind of answer. Sit down, Rita, he said softly. She sat. And then he told her everything. And she told him everything. And the truth filled the room like something that had been held underwater finally coming up for air. He told her how he'd come home to an empty house, and a mother full of explanations, and a fever that put him flat for 2 weeks. How he'd planned a search when he was better, how the papers arrived before he was. How he'd taken custody of Ella because his mother told him it was best, because he'd thought Rita had moved on, because the grief of it had pushed him back into work and more work. How, when he finally did search for her, he found her. How he had sat in his car outside her house more than once, watching her take Daniel to school, her hand in his, her laugh carrying in the morning air. I wanted to go to you, he said, and his voice was not the voice of a CEO. It was the voice of a man who had been lonely for 5 years. But I thought you wouldn't want me, that you'd made your choice. Rita's eyes were wet. She wasn't going to apologize for that. She told him about showing up at the house every single day, about begging for her phone, about being turned away from seeing her own daughter, about the divorce papers and the signature she'd almost contested and didn't, because she'd been so broken she didn't have the fight in her anymore. I should have tried harder, she said. I know that now. You did try, Min-jae said. Every day, apparently, while I was lying sick upstairs with no idea. She reached into her purse then, the instinct, the habit, and pulled out the photograph. She set it on the desk between them. It was worn at the edges, soft from being handled. Her own face looked up from it, laughing in his mother's garden, free and happy and absolutely unaware of what was coming. Min-jae looked at it for a long time. I've carried it every day, Rita said. I don't know why. Maybe because it was the last picture of me when things were good. Min-jae looked up from the photograph to her face. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Then he stood, and she stood, and he crossed the distance in 3 steps, and she let him. And when he hugged her, she grabbed the back of his jacket and held on with 5 years' worth of everything. They didn't stay in the office long after that. There wasn't much more to say with words. The words had done their work. Cracked things open, let the air back in. What was left was the kind of quiet that comes after a storm when everything is wet and still and you're standing in it just breathing. Min-jae drove. Rita sat in the passenger seat of a car she didn't recognize, in a life that had rearranged itself in the space of one morning, and watched the city move past her window. Jade, she said, after a while. She's gone, Min-jae said. She was never. I want you to understand what that was. I was drowning in work. Ella needed someone in the house. It wasn't, he exhaled. It was never that. Did Ella like her? She was polite to her the way Ella is polite to everyone she doesn't fully trust. He glanced sideways. She gets that from you. Rita said nothing, but something in her chest loosened a little. Your mother, she said, died last year. She didn't say she was sorry. He didn't expect her to. They sat with that for a moment. The complicated grief of a woman who had caused so much damage and was now simply gone. She wasn't well, toward the end, Min-jae said. Not in the way that excuses anything. I want to be clear. What she did was not okay. But she wasn't well. He was quiet. I should have protected you from her from the beginning. I should have seen it sooner. Yes, Rita said. You should have. He nodded. He didn't argue with that. We're going to have to figure out a lot of things, Rita said. I know. It won't be simple. I know that too. She turned to look at him. This man she had married at 22. This man she had loved with the full weight of herself. This man she had mourned for 5 years without a funeral to attend. He looked older. Not badly, just lived in. The way people look when they've been carrying something heavy for a long time. She probably looked the same. We're going to the school, she asked. We're going to the school. Daniel was in the middle of a very heated debate about whether a dinosaur could beat a shark when he looked up and saw his mother walking through the school gate. That wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the man walking beside her. Daniel knew that face. Not from meeting him, from photographs, from the careful research he had done the year he turned 5 and decided he wanted to know who his father was. He hadn't told his mom about the research. He'd filed the information away and waited, the way he did with most important things. He stood up very slowly. Ella was still explaining the shark's advantages when she noticed Daniel wasn't listening anymore. She followed his gaze to the gate. She saw her father first. Appa. Min-jae raised a hand in a small wave, and his face, that careful, controlled face she had spent her whole life studying, was doing something she didn't see it do very often. It was soft, unguarded in a way that made him look, briefly, like someone younger. Then Ella looked at the woman beside him. Rita. She looked at Daniel. Daniel looked at her. A very long moment passed between them in which 6 years of shared human experience on this earth were rapidly reorganized. Daniel. Ella said slowly. I know, he said. I know. That means we're sister and... Ella, I know. Ella turned back to look at their parents, who were now close enough that she could see their faces properly. Her father had his hands in his pockets. Rita was watching her with those eyes that were warm and sad and certain all at once. Ella straightened up to her full height, which was not very tall but felt significant. I knew it, she announced, loudly enough for both parents to hear. I said from the beginning there was something strange going on. I knew it. Daniel pointed at her. You literally didn't say that until just now. I said it in my head. That doesn't count. It counts to me. Min Jae crouched down to Ella's level the way he always did when something was important, and he held her by the shoulders and looked at her with an expression she had never quite seen on him before. Not the contained CEO face, not the tired after-work face, but something raw and real that made her want to hug him. So she did. She climbed straight into his arms and he held her tight, and over the top of her head he looked at Rita, and Rita was looking at them both with her hand pressed over her mouth and her eyes shining. Daniel drifted to his mother's side. Rita put her arm around him automatically, the way she always did. The way she had done since the day he was born. But her eyes stayed on Ella, and something about the fierceness in them made Daniel look up at her. Mom, he said quietly. Is she my sister? Rita looked down at him. She is, she said. Daniel processed this. He looked at Ella, who was now pulling back from her father, and turning to look at him with an expression he recognized as the one she wore when she was about to say something that she considered very smart. Daniel, Ella said. Ella, he said. We are, she said. An extremely unique sibling situation. We really are. Half Korean, half black, living in separate houses with one dad and one mom between us. Reunited through a wallet photograph and an above-average level of curiosity. You're making a speech, Daniel said. I feel the moment deserves one. It really doesn't. I think it does. Ella. Fine. She walked over to him and he opened his arms in the manner of someone who had always had a sibling, even when he hadn't, and she went into the hug with the enthusiasm of someone who had been waiting for exactly this. Min Jae watched. Rita watched. They stood a few feet apart in the school car park. These two people who had lost 5 years to a lie and a letter and a woman who was no longer here to answer for it, and they watched their children hold each other with the uncomplicated certainty that only children have. The certainty that says, you are mine and I am yours and we don't need anyone to explain it. Rita's breath came out uneven. Min Jae took a step closer to her. Not touching. Just close. We have a lot to figure out, he said. You said that already. I might need to keep saying it until I believe we'll actually get through it. She looked at him sideways. We will. He looked at her. You sound certain. I survived 5 years without you, she said. I can survive the hard work of getting you back. He didn't say anything to that, but something moved across his face that looked, unmistakably, like hope. The weeks that followed were not a fairy tale. They were phone calls that went long into the night. They were awkward dinners where nobody quite knew where to sit. They were two children who had appointed themselves project managers of a family reunion and took the role extremely seriously. Ella made a chart. It had columns. Daniel looked at the chart for a long time and then said, Ella, this is a lot. Relationships require structure, Ella said, which was something she had heard her father say about business and had decided applied to all things. We're 6. Almost 7. That doesn't make the chart less frightening. She tapped the first column. This is family dinners. We need at least 2 a week to build cohesion. She tapped the second. This is feelings check-ins, which I read about in one of Appa's management books. You read management books? I read everything. This one said that communication prevents conflict. She tapped the third column. And this is date nights for mom and dad, which Daniel, you and I will be in charge of coordinating because they are very bad at taking initiative. Daniel looked at her. You are the strangest person I've ever met, he said. And I fully love that about you. Thank you. She handed him a pen. Initial here to confirm you've reviewed the chart. He initialed. The first date happened because Daniel told his mother to dress nicely because she and Ella's dad were going for dinner at 7, and Ella had told her father the same thing, and neither parent had realized the other was involved until they both arrived at the restaurant at the same time and found a table already booked under the name, Kimokafor Family Business. Rita had looked at the reservation name and laughed. Actually laughed. The full wide laugh from the photograph, and the sound of it hit Min Jae somewhere so specific and familiar that he had to clear his throat and look at the menu for a moment. Dinner was easy. That surprised both of them, because they had braced for stiffness, for the weight of everything between them. Instead it was easy. The way it had been easy from the beginning. back when they were 21 and 22 and had collided in a university corridor over a spilled coffee and started talking and found they couldn't stop. They talked for 3 hours. About the children, about work, about the small things, music and food, and what they'd both read lately, and the ways the city had changed. About the larger things too, gently, carefully. The grief and the anger and the strange relief of finally knowing the truth, even if the truth came 5 years late. Walking back to the car, Min Jae's hand brushed hers. Neither of them moved away. Same time next week? He said. Daniel and Ella will have already booked it, she said. Probably with a reservation name even more embarrassing than tonight's. Definitely. She paused. Yes. Same time next week. There were more dinners. More walks. More long phone calls and more mornings where one of them showed up at the other's door with coffee and they stood in the hallway talking longer than made practical sense. There were hard conversations too. The ones where old hurt surfaced and had to be looked at directly, acknowledged, and gently set down. There were evenings where Rita drove home with complicated feelings she couldn't fully name yet. There were nights where Min Jae sat in his study and thought about 5 years of choices and wondered which ones he could have made differently. But they came back. Every time, they came back. Because the truth, the inconvenient, persistent, unignorable truth, was that they had never stopped loving each other. Not through the silence or the distance or the years or the grief. Love doesn't dissolve because it's interrupted. Sometimes it just waits, like a room you thought was empty, and when you open the door again the light is still on. Ella observed all of this with the careful attention of a very small scholar and reported her findings to Daniel regularly. They held hands at the park, she said one afternoon. Noted, said Daniel. Appa smiled at his phone 3 times this morning, and it wasn't work. Classic sign. I think we're close, she said. But they need a push. What kind of push? Ella looked at him. I'm thinking a letter. Daniel slowly put down his juice box. Ella, we are children. We write letters to Father Christmas. Not a letter, she said firmly, from both of us. Explaining that we are siblings and that we would like to be a family and that they should hurry up because we are not getting any younger. We are literally getting younger. We're children. We grow, we don't. Daniel. Fine. They wrote the letter. It was 2 pages long. It included the chart. Min Jae read it at his kitchen table on a Tuesday evening. He got to page 2 and had to stop and press his knuckle against his mouth for a moment. Not because he was sad, but because the love in it was so direct and so enormous that it had winded him slightly. His daughter had drawn a small diagram at the bottom. It was labeled, Our Family, Proposed Final Version. In the center were 2 figures, one tall with straight black hair, one tall with a black bob. On either side of them were 2 smaller figures. Under the first small figure it said, Ella, me, the organized one. Under the second it said, Daniel, the one who asks good questions. Under the whole diagram it said, Asterisk please confirm. Ella and Daniel Kimokafor, asterisk. Min Jae sat with the letter for a long time. Then he called Rita. Did you get a letter? He said. I'm reading it right now, she said. Her voice was thick. The chart is on page 2. I see the chart. She included KPIs for family cohesion, Rita. I know. I raised one of the authors, I know. A pause. I think we should do something about this, he said. I agree, she said. I think we've made them wait long enough. They got married on a Saturday in late spring. Nothing enormous. Nothing that would require the children to wait for months or for the world to be assembled. Just the people they loved. A garden with white flowers because Min Jae had found one deliberately, and an afternoon that felt like exhaling. Ella wore a cream dress with a sash she had personally selected because she had opinions about sashes. Daniel wore a suit and had agreed to it with less argument than anyone expected, mostly because Ella had presented him with a very brief written summary of why it mattered, and he had found it persuasive. They stood at the front together while their parents exchanged their vows for the second time. The first time in a courthouse years ago, young and certain. This time in a garden, older and more certain. The kind of certain you can only be after you've lost something and found it again. When the officiant said the last words and Min Jae and Rita turned to each other, and the small gathered crowd made the sound that people make at weddings, Ella turned to Daniel. We did this, she said quietly. We did, he agreed. The chart worked. I'll never doubt your charts again. See that you don't. He grinned. She grinned back. And then both of them turned to look at their parents. Their mum, their dad, standing together in a garden full of white flowers with the afternoon light on them. And the expression on Ella's face was the one Rita would later say she remembered most from the whole day. Not the ceremony, not the flowers, just her daughter's face, looking at them with something so complete in it that it didn't need a name. That night, after the little ones had been put to bed, after the protests and the negotiations and the one final argument about who had the better side of the bed in their new shared room, Min-jae and Rita sat on the back step of the house with 2 glasses of wine and the kind of quiet that belongs to people who have earned it. She made a chart, Min-jae said. She made a chart, Rita confirmed, of our relationship, with milestones and accountability markers. She's 6. Almost 7. He looked at her. She looked at him. And then they laughed. Really laughed, both of them. The way you laugh when something is so absurd and so perfect that there's no other appropriate response. And the sound of it went out into the dark garden, and the night was warm, and the flowers were white, and the years that had been lost were gone, but the years ahead were many. Rita leaned her head against his shoulder. He rested his against hers. We lost 5 years, she said, after a while. We did. I'm not going to pretend that's nothing. It's not nothing, he agreed. But we have the rest. She lifted her wine glass slightly, a small private toast. The rest, she said. The rest, he said. And somewhere upstairs, in a shared room that still had cardboard boxes along one wall and one very detailed chart taped above the desk, Ella and Daniel were not asleep. Daniel, Ella whispered. What? This is the best thing we've ever done. A pause. It really is, he said. And we did it with a wallet picture and basic investigative skills. And the chart. And the chart, she agreed, satisfied. Then there was quiet, and outside the window the spring night went on. And inside the house all 4 of them slept under the same roof for the first time. The family that had been interrupted and reunited, the children who had found each other on a Monday morning, the 2 people who had loved each other across 5 years of silence and found their way back. Some things that are broken get repaired. And some things, when you look closely, were never fully broken, just waiting. Asterisk, and that's it for today. If this story made you feel something, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment below. Which moment hit you the hardest? The wallet picture? The chart? Or that garden at the end? Tell me. I'll be reading every single one. Asterisk.